And welcome back. If you are just joining us, you're watching GBS Morning Extra here, coming to you live from our studio here in Nairobi. And if you'd like to keep the conversation going, remember our hashtag is GBS Morning Extra. Our Twitter handle is @KenyaGBS. You can drop us an SMS on 21144, and our email is info@gbskenya.com. As I mentioned earlier, and I promised that today in studio we are going to discuss the state of peace in South Sudan. Now, South Sudan is Africa's youngest state. And since their independence, that is, since they seceded from Sudan, the country went for a few years, a few peaceful years. But then after that, we've seen conflict after conflict. It's quite unfortunate because it's a land that is fertile. It's a land that has very cheerful and loving people. And it's quite unfortunate to see that a people who longed for a very long time to be free and to govern themselves and to enjoy the resources that God gave them and the life that was provided, that they are not able to do that. Most of them live outside their country, and we've got South Sudanese in Kenya, we've got them in other parts of Africa and the world. The reason is because there's been conflict after conflict in their country. But there have been efforts to try and quell these conflicts and bring normalcy to this country so that they can enjoy lasting peace. And in these efforts, several efforts were thwarted, but then this time we are actually looking into about 20 or so days to a deadline that was given for the formation of a transitional government of national unity that will allow them to have a transitional government that will then arrange for elections and then, just bring the country back on its feet. To help me discuss this further this morning, I have with me guests in the studio, members of the civil society from South Sudan, and I'm really grateful that they found time to come and discuss this with us. I would first like them to introduce themselves and what they do before we start. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Daniel, I know you, but I would like you to take this opportunity to just greet our viewers and introduce yourself.
Thank you, Mr. James. I'm happy to be here this morning.
Welcome.
At GBS Studio. My name is Daniel Deng. I'm an activist, human rights activist, and peace activist. I am sharing civil society organization here in Nairobi.
Yes.
And I've been here actively in affairs to do with peace in South Sudan, based in Nairobi and outside of the country.
Yes.
So I'm happy to be here this morning.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. And yourself?
Thank you very much, Pastor Timothy,
Yes.
for hosting us this morning.
Yes.
My name is Todd Michael. I come from South Sudan. I'm a peace activist. My activism is on empowering youth.
Yes.
And trying also to be part of solution for these social issues that the society is facing.
All right.
So it's my pleasure to be here.
Welcome. I'd like us to discuss a raft of issues, if time will allow us. I want us to look at, there's cattle raiding in South Sudan. During the fighting, people planted landmines. Those are issues. We've got youths, like you said, you normally champion for the rights and social good for the youth in your country. They're the youth who are being affected by the continued conflict. Time and time again, there are natural disasters that strike the country. The difficulties that aid workers face or government also face in terms of providing the necessary aid that is needed to these people. There is the unification of forces. As we know, we've had different factions fighting in the country, and part of the plan right now is to bring all these forces together to serve under one uniform, under one commander-in-chief. We also got ultimately the formation of the transitional government of national unity. And among also, I believe, the contentious issues that we've also had that I would also like us to touch on is the formation of states, which I think has been a thorn in the side of the leaders as they try to come together and agree on which way forward. Maybe if I may start with Bwana Daniel Deng. I normally call him chairman. If I may start with you, Bwana Daniel, how do you view, or what is the state of the peace talks right now and the formation of the national government?
Thank you, Mr. Timmins. Currently, the region and the international community is aware of whereby the warring parties have a lot of difficulties, especially the issue of state and boundaries, because at the moment we have 32 states, which is not one of the things in peace agreement.
Yes.
So this issue, it is a very controversial, but in their discussion as both warring parties, they are not able to work out the success of this issue. But there is nowhere the government can be formed without number of states, actually, because there is a lot of issues in that clause. When peace was signed, it was signed based on 10 states. But when the government came back to Juba, they unilaterally declared that we should have 28 states, and then from 28 states to 32 states. So this has been discussed, and it is the only issue, I think, at the moment is what make extension always to happen. So with the region and international community, as long they know very well these leaders, they have stuck, because it is a political issue. It is a political issue, and if it is a political issue, it needs a political solution from both warring parties plus the grantors. So we are worried, actually, at the moment, because the days has been limited. At the moment, we have almost 25 days, and then we form the government. But if these leaders fail to work out this, then automatically there will be another extension. And this will be really a disaster to citizens, as long as you have talked about the displacement. So at the moment, the only hope for citizens is peace. But if there is the formation of the government, automatically citizens will lose hope on these leaders.
Now, I mean, Bwana Michael, how do we move from this? Because I think one time I was having a discussion with a brother from South Sudan, and his view was that as long as the warring factions are left alone and not given conditions on reaching to a peace agreement, then we'll continue to see these extensions, and then these extensions won't do any good to the citizens. Like Bwana Daniel Deng said, the citizens will continue to be hurt because of the displacement and the lack of access to even basic things like health and education.
Thank you very much, Timothy. This issue of states in South Sudan is a very, very crucial matter. There has been urged by the international community to actually pressure the warring parties, mainly the opposition and the government, to actually come together and reach a consensus. I think Machar was in Juba. He left Juba recently, a few days ago. And his being in Juba was to discuss these contention issues, the number of states, and also the training of the unified forces.
The unified forces, yeah.
I think when he left Juba recently, there was no agreement between him and the president.
The president, yes.
On the number of states.
Sure.
And again, recently we've had Assistant Secretary of State from America. And he's coming to Africa, and South Sudan was also to try to push the parties actually to reach an agreement.
To pile more pressure on them.
Yes, to make sure by the deadline, 22nd February this year, they form a new government. And I think, according to the information that is coming in at the moment, the international community, more so the US, are actually telling the warring parties to form transitional government by February deadline.
All right.
Failure to do so, there will be consequences. So I think the parties actually need to come in dialogue, a genuine dialogue, to have consensus on the number of states.
I want us to come back and discuss that a little bit later, because it's an issue that actually needs to be, divulged extensively. But I would also like to talk about the state of the youth. Right now, as we speak, we've got quite a number of young people who are displaced still within South Sudan and outside South Sudan. What is the plight of youth in that country, Michael?
Well, personally, I was in Juba last year. I was in Juba in December. And I can tell you for sure, Timothy, things are not okay.
All right.
Things are not okay as far as youth are concerned. South Sudan is like any other country in the world or in Africa, has the huge number of youth.
Yes.
Youth are the majority in the country. So when you look at that big number, that is left just there. It has no future. They do not know about tomorrow.
Yes.
Tomorrow is uncertain for this youth. So if you talk about Juba, Juba is just a small percentage that is living in Juba of youth. So you go to these rural areas, there's a number of youth who are living in those areas.
In those areas, yes.
These young people, one, they are not empowered. So if they are not empowered, what will happen? These people, they actually end up joining or participating in negative things.
Negative things, yeah.
Things like engaging in cattle raiding, things like engaging in petty crimes. So if at all young people are left the way they are today in South Sudan, and nothing is done by ensuring that they are empowered, then the future of South Sudan is actually in limbo.
Daniel, the United Nations and other organizations are trying to talk to these youth and trying to give them opportunities to train them in some jobs and give them as much education as possible within. What do you think lies ahead for the future of this country? Because given that about, I think, more than 70% of South Sudanese are under the age of 30, I was reading somewhere in a UN report.
Mr. Tim, the place of use in South Sudan at the moment is one of the concern issue for us as civil society. As Michael put it, is youth is the majority in the country, and there is no space for work for them. So it seems like there is a strategy which has been put by the government. So the only window now for youth, it is just you've been told, go and take the gun and fight for the war that cannot even benefit them.
That's the only thing left.
That is the only window which is there for use. So you can get a degree, and then when you go to Juba, all of us, we cannot be accommodated by the UN.
Yes.
Because the only way where you can work now, it is the UN. Getting a job within the government, there is no companies which are giving you employment.
Sure.
So it is one of the issue which is a challenge to the concerned citizen like us as a civil society, because you cannot make use vulnerable. Look at the moment in South Sudan, there is what we call, what is being called in South Sudan, unknown gunmen. And these people, they form gang, and this gang, they have to look for survival.
Yes.
Main. If they get you a gun, they have to rob, and then they use that as a way of living, actually. So it is a challenge. So to the government and the opposition, we call them opposition at the moment. So if they want to think or to make this country to be stable, it is now to put their problem apart and then think, how can we take this use somewhere? Here in Kenya we have agenda, 4 agenda.
Yes.
And the work or what should be done to youth is in that 4 agenda.
That, yeah.
So if we think of South Sudan, whereby we fought for almost 50 years, and then when we got independent, we failed to think, why do we fight all along?
Why did you fight all along?
All along. So, and then now, we just think of how to control the money of oil, and then we start fighting. So, it is a challenge to us, but we always hide the leaders to put their interests down and then think about use. Because you cannot think of where At the moment, we are being educated outside the country. In South Sudan, the education which is there, it is just still young as the country. There is no education, there is no road, there is no other way where we can employ youth. So I believe the only way for youth to get a space, it is the region, because it will be a threat to the region also.
Yes.
Because the conflict in South Sudan, it is a threat to the region.
To the region as a whole.
The same to the international community. So it is the responsibility of the region, international community, to put more pressure actually. That is where now we'll be thinking about youth employment in the country.
I mean, just to add on Dan's point.
Yes.
Currently, we have the UN Youth Representative visiting South Sudan.
All right, yes.
And she had several meetings with the government, with the UNDP, and also with the youth.
Yes.
Because the youth umbrella has a leadership. And in her discussions with these various groups, she was encouraging the government to invest in youth.
In youth, yes.
The reason why she was urging the government to invest in youth is because she knows the future of South Sudan lies in the youth. Because if you do not empower these young people, believe me, these old people are actually phasing out slowly.
Sure.
So who are the future? The youth are the future.
Is the youth.
So the agencies that are in the country, UNDP and the likes, they really need to do a lot. I've seen World Vision has done tremendous job.
All right.
In part of Greater Equatoria and also Upper Nile and Barrel Ghazal.
All right.
They are empowering young people, giving them these technical skills in vocational. Once you have that skill, you can be able to venture into farming.
Sure.
Farming today in South Sudan has been neglected. No young people is in farming.
Are interested in farming.
What if now you
and
gain
you have one
skill?
of the most fertile.
Definitely. If you gain that technical skill and then you go to the farm and farm, you don't actually need rain. There's water, plenty of it. Just go to farm, have that skill and initiate farming project. That produce that you're producing will be sold locally. You don't have to import food from Kenya and Kenya. You'll produce local food and that will be good for the country.
Very true. And they say that more than 2.2 million children are missing out in education, and at least 12% of girls drop out of primary school because of pregnancy or marriages, and another 20% of girls drop out of secondary school. These are reports that I'm reading, and as you mentioned, I think we had the pictures there run of the UN representative for youth, the lady who visited South Sudan. I think she's still in South Sudan.
She's currently in the country.
She's
still in the country.
She's still in the country.
Yeah, she's still in South Sudan.
You know, when you look at such things, in a country where 72% of the population are people under the age of 30, and we have this clique that is older, we will call them the old guard, still holding the country ransom. They're not going to be around for long. But apart from that, I would also like us to look at another very pertinent issue that affects South Sudan. And I would like to get your view on this, and maybe if there's some, experiences or something that actually we can say that is a matter of course, that you would like to share, where we find in South Sudan, there are floods and natural disasters that occur, but then it's difficult for even aid workers to reach these places and to help the communities. Why? Because there are no roads to access these places. Secondly, still there are pockets of violence here and there. How do we go about this?
Mr. Timothy, this issue of natural disaster, I think it is something that seems like it's a punishment, especially last year. You can see the whole country is in flood. And the only life where people put their hope by then, it is humanitarian. Because the government declare a state of emergency.
Yes.
But when they declare a state of emergency, they do not even do what's supposed to be done when you declare the state of emergency. So it means a lot when you say this is the time now for us to declare the state of emergency. But the government could not do anything because I think there are some challenges whereby they don't have resources. And the resources are being confined somewhere whereby if you don't say, oh yeah, this is SPLM or the government, you will not get
You will
anything.
not get the resources.
So it is one of the issues. So when that disaster came, you have seen in South Sudan,
Yeah.
many people travel to the higher ground.
Okay.
And that give a lot of people different disease. People have died because of that. So for us who are concerned outside the country, we have no what we can do unless now to advocate for humanitarian to do the work.
Yes.
So if you see the state of South Sudan at the moment, it is the humanitarian who are doing more work rather than the government. Here in Kenya, I know very well when such a thing happened, the government chipping, humanitarian chipping, and everybody who have powers, business community, they chip in.
So it's a concerted effort.
It is cooperative responsibility. But in South Sudan, it is only humanitarian. So sometimes you think, where are these leaders actually? When the country is like this, is it because the conflict is between Machar and Salva? You wonder. You could not even went deeply to understand the issue, because it seemed like it is a personal. But when we go deeply, sometimes this conflict is not personal, because Salva Kiir and Machar, I always say, these are friends. They work together, they support each other. But when they come together, they change completely to become a different people. For example, when the conflict erupted in 2013, you see, Salva take the responsibility for the children of Machar, evacuate the children to Nairobi. So, and then it showed that these people, they are not fighting. The same in 2016, when the conflict erupted in J1.
Yes.
So, young people, very good people, those who have been educated, being trained for the government asset. So, those young people, they went, they died.
They died.
But immediately when they know that these people have died, they address the nation, and then Salva himself evacuate Machar to his house. Yes. And then on the next day, now they run, follow Machar, they say they want to kill him. Sure. Which is not, for those who are enlightened, they cannot agree whether these people are fighting. The same in 2016. Machar was confined in South Africa. Who was providing Machar medical care, house, security? It is Salva himself who is doing this. The same in Khartoum now. Machar is being said, is being confined. And when you look at it, it is the same Salva who is doing all these activities. So for us as a civil society and enlightened people, we have realized that these people are not fighting. But they are using the disadvantaged communities, those who are desperate, telling themselves, no, this is our enemy, this is our enemy, which is not true in me. So it is a challenge. As long we have this state, the challenges we have now, unless there is a political will to think for the citizen rather than self.
I'd like you to comment a little bit on that, the issue of natural disasters and stuff, because, I mean, is it easy to see either Salva or, of course, Machar has not been in the country for a while, but then is it easy to see Salva on site where there's been a flood or a landslide, condoling with the families?
I do not see such a thing unless, but I've been following the news in South Sudan. I do not see whether Salva has went to Bom State, especially Bom State, which was flood, Jonglei State, which was completely. So I think the only time when Salva visited, it is only time when he went to Bargadal, from Bargadal, and then he went to Rome. That was the time, but there was no flood by then. So I did not see the government has gone out. If I might be contradicting to what they are doing, but I did not see the government has put effort in that.
Yeah, Michael.
Well, you will allow me to comment on the state of education in South Sudan?
Yes.
Just briefly. You mentioned clearly that there are about 2-point-something million children.
2.2 million children who are missing out of education.
I would testify to this. I come from Greater Upper Nile.
Yes.
And Greater Upper Nile, if I'm allowed to say this, has been affected massively by the ongoing conflict. Reason being, most of the people that are fighting are actually from that region. Well, when you look at the Great Upper Nile, majority of the children who are not in school are from that region.
All right.
And all along from 2013 up to this juncture, they are still not in school. Few who are actually lucky, they are maybe in some humanitarian organization schools.
Yeah, some
and these
mixed
schools
schools
are not actually supported fully. Maybe they are partially supported. So you'd find that in an area of about 100 people plus, there are only maybe 20 children going to school. The rest are not there. So there's a problem, there's a challenge. And if you talk about sustainable peace, without education, there will be challenge in that part of the country, or the country as a whole. Coming to the issue of disaster, South Sudan was submerged in 2019. That is around October, September,
Yes.
September, October.
September, October.
The
yes.
entire, mostly, actually, generally, the entire country was submerged. There was flooding all over. There was flooding in Greater Equatoria, Greater Upper Nile, and Greater Barghazal. And this affected so many people. There was huge displacement of people. People moved to better grounds,
Yeah, to higher grounds.
to higher grounds. And this was actually also a problem, because you're going to a place where it's already overcrowded due to conflict, because people are confined in some small areas.
Sure.
So you are displaced here, and then you move to another place which is also crowded, and that is also a source of conflict. There will be scarcity of resources there,
Yes, yes.
and then what will happen at the end? People will fight. Secondly, there was the issue of diseases,
Yes.
cholera outbreak,
outbreaks of cholera
and
and
so forth. There was also snake bites. There were several. Actually, there were a number of them reported in Upper Nile, because frequently we were in touch with people on the ground. And there was actually a whole lot of issues. There was problem. At the moment is when the water level is going down.
Yes,
So the dry season is setting in. Nevertheless, there will also be problems, because currently in Upper Nile, most of the communities are pastoral communities, and they are nomad. They move from one place to another. So this is time now they'll be moving to look for water and pasture for their livestock. So in that process, you would find that there's some areas that are still wet, and this pastoral community will not want to stay in those areas, move to another place that is higher. And then in the process, they will encounter conflict. So the disaster in South Sudan has actually created problems, and it continues to actually bring more problems. Therefore, the solution to this is South Sudan to prepare. There should be disaster preparedness. In South Sudan, that is lacking. The humanitarian organizations are not disaster prepared. They are not prepared completely, and the government. So going forward, they should prepare for disaster, because these disasters are there. Now that we have the climate change, the global warming and everything.
But also you're looking at a situation where there's no, stable government. And, if there's no stable government, there's no equitable resources that are adequate resources that are able to be disbursed to the different parts of the country. And South Sudan is a big country. Now, for interest of time, I want us to just try and fast track this in the shortest time possible. The unification of forces is a matter that is also among the most contentious issues. Conclusively, what do you think is the way forward on the same? I would just like to get very quick bites from you on that, starting with you, Mr. Deng.
Yeah, Mr. Tim, the unification of forces as per of what is going on at the moment, some of the forces have gone to the cantonment side. But the challenge is what we have been heard. It is some people sometimes they run away because of life is not 100%, and because there was a lot of expectation when they were cantoned. So sometimes there is no good facilities of hospital, food, and maybe shelters. But the unification, as per the news we heard at the moment,
yes,
soldiers has gone, but there are some soldiers which have not gone. Opposition, especially IO, according to what we have been heard, their forces are gone, even some government forces.
But sometime with the report recently, which was released, I don't know whether it is, which is it JMEC? Some of the government forces have not gone for cantonment, but opposition are going. But I think as the pressure is mounting on them, they will be going to the cantonment.
As pressure continues to mount.
Definitely.
And this pressure must come from outside.
From outside, because I think outside, especially international community, have seen the suffering of South Sudanese. But the only hope at the moment, it is this peace. So if there will be no peace, then the hope will completely die. But this peace will come when we have a unification army, whereby we'll be having national army.
Sure.
So from this pre-transition to the real transition, it is now we have to have a national army. But this national army should be done with this process.
But then one thing that we also need to agree is that these people have been fighting for the longest time possible.
Definitely.
And bringing them together and uniting them will not be an easy task.
It is not an easy task.
It's not an easy task. I want to end that there, and I want to finish with, I want also to come to you. Going forward, what do you think? We have less than 25 days to this to the deadline for the formation of the government. Your take on that, and then I'll get that from Deng, and I think we'll have to wrap it up.
Well, I think ceasefire has been holding since 2018.
Yes.
This is something worth appreciating, because fighting stopped as soon as the forces were able to talk to their forces. The parties were able to talk to their forces. And that has been really helping a lot in making sure there's movement from one place to the other. Coming to the issue of reunification, it's very crucial, because you cannot form a government without a unified army, because likely there will be problems.
There'll be problems.
So this ongoing unification and training and so forth is very crucial. As Dan said, there are challenges. Forces are now cantoned. The training, I think, has started. It's ongoing, and this is very encouraging. So going forward is for the parties to the agreement to continue actually working in good faith by ensuring there's a national army. Because if you don't do that, even if you form a government, you likely
it will not be easy.
Help.
For interest of time, we cannot discuss everything, but then I believe that whatever we have touched, we've actually touched base on the most important issues that are affecting the South Sudan country, away from the politics. We've also looked at the natural disasters, what needs to be done, matters of education and how to strengthen the societies. And because of time, we'll have to end it here. But these are a yes or no answer that I would like to pick from both of you, and I would like us to watch these 20 or something remaining days, and then I would like us also to be back here by end of February, and let's talk about this and see where is everything. Are we likely to see a formation of a government by the end of February, yes or no?
Yes.
Yes. Hopeful that we are going to see her?
It's yes.
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 Thank you very much. And I'll bank on what Daniel said. You said hope. I mean, only hope is what we're waiting for. Viewer, thank you very much for joining us today and for having time to be with us. We've been discussing matters to do with the state of peace in South Sudan. And South Sudan is a sister country, and everybody knows that Kenya has been like a big brother or a big sister to South Sudan, and we've been housing South Sudan, and we've been working also towards the peace of South Sudan. We know the likes of General Sumbeya, we have the likes of Bethel Kiplagat, the former Vice President Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka, the former President of Kenya, Daniel Arap Moi. All these are people who have poured concerted effort in ensuring that there is peace in South Sudan all along since the talks to secede began, and so on and so forth. Well, that brings us to the end of this segment. For interest of time, viewer, we have to end it here. And I want to keep the conversation going on South Sudan. And I really believe that, God willing, we will see the signing or the formation of a transitional government of national unity that will ensure that peace is restored in the country. That brings us to the end of our segment this time. I will pave way now for my colleague Kevin Nyariki, who will be coming up next with the Sports Extra. My name is Timothy Omondi. See you again tomorrow, God willing. Bye-bye for now.